My guest today is Charline Mitchell, a lactation consultant, doula, and advocate, founder of what could be Queen's first birth center. Hi, Charline.
It's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
For those that don't know you, can you explain exactly what you do?
So, some days is really hard, but the best way to sum it up is that we support families from conception all the way to college. So, essentially, we provide prenatal support for families as a doula. When baby is born, we have doula support at the hospital or home birth setting. And then we also provide postpartum support care and lactation.
I know you have big vision and we're going to talk about this, but how did it all started?
So, that's a great question. So, I actually went into work thinking about what can I do to support families and what can I do to do it in a way that, elevates the things that they need. So I actually was a school counselor for New York State Department of Education and working with families, and what transitioned to my now career into being a maternal health advocate all started with one student, and that student became pregnant.
Tell me more.
So essentially, this student was on my caseload. They were having challenges passing their academic rigor. And the student basically came to me and they said, I'm pregnant. And I'm like, okay, thanks for telling me. Like, what would you like me to do with that? And I was just like, I didn't really know at that moment what to say, because as a school counselor, there's very rigid lines onto what you can discuss and what you can not discuss with students. And this was kind of like bordering that category, but I knew how important it must have been for them to tell me something so sensitive of that. So I connected them to community-based resources. And then from there, like, my curiosity ran wild. And then we started to have different parents that I worked with on my caseload that were pregnant. So I got to continue to develop that resource list for families as they need it.
And what exactly is that resource list? What did they need at that time?
So at that time, it really was starting with understanding what being pregnant means. So for some, it was really that childbirth education. For others, it was about lactation and breastfeeding, because sometimes we have the idea in our minds that I want to provide breast milk to my baby, but I'm not really sure how that is practically and how that would go for me. And particularly, a lot of the families that I was serving were families of color, and the lactation rates and the breastfeeding rates are really low in some cases. And sometimes the duration rates, which is how long their breastfeeding, is low, because a lot of our families are returning back to work a lot sooner.
And what was at that time the gap that you saw and the challenges that you faced?
So at that time, I think the first initial gap was finding a resource, right? A lot of the things that the families needed wasn't necessarily something that they knew to call. Like, back in the day, we had a yellow pages, and literally the yellow pages would tell you where to go for anything that you needed, but we don't necessarily have that resource or that one communal place. So first it was identifying the resources and then connecting them to the resource, because a lot of the programs that did exist, sometimes it was a dead end. It was a phone number, it was an email, and you would reach out to that contact and that person no longer is there, or the program doesn't exist anymore. So making sure that we were connecting them to the resources that were appropriate to them and that was still existing, and then helping them build that confidence to actually try something new, because having and being pregnant is not an easy conversation to have with a complete stranger. So helping them to develop that rapport so that they can continue to get services beyond our conversation.
And I'm assuming you were continuing to be school counselor.
Yes.
Helping
So
young moms. How did you start? Like, what were the first steps, and what was the decision to do a birth center? Where that came from?
So basically, I was a school counselor from 9 to 3, and then in the evening, I was supporting families going to labor, to postpartum. So it was a pretty chaotic time, and I think that the transition happened where I realized I was in a setting that no longer allowed me to be present in the way that I wanted to be for the family. So I had to make a very difficult decision to separate from the Department of Education in my role as a school counselor. And I went into the business full time. I started my own organization, which is Supporting Our Mothers Initiative, named after my first child, Sophia Michelle. And then since then, the doors have really been opening for me. And what I realized very early on is that it was an amazing experience to be a doula. It was an amazing experience to be at IBCLC and to support families through this very intimate time. But then I started to think about the other 24,000 babies that's born in Queens every year that didn't get the support because they didn't have access to a doula or a lactation consultant. So I learned about birth centers, and I was like, aha, this is exactly what I want to do. It literally mirrors everything that I want to do, and really being that resource for families from conception all the way to college. And it's literally the answers that I've been searching for a very long time.
We're going to talk about this, but a little backtrack. So when you started the nonprofit organization, did you also get licensed as a doula or lactation specialist? How did that happen?
So essentially, I started first as a postpartum doula. That's the first training I got. And I started as a postpartum doula when I was 4 months postpartum. So I just had my baby. And I had a dream, and the dream was essentially telling me that I would start a company. I've never had a company before. There's no one in my family that's ever had a company before, but that's what the dream led me to think. So I started a training in the evening, and then I did that training. After that, I did the birth doula training, and then after the birth doula training, maybe a year and a half after, I started lactation training, which was very intensive, and in my opinion was one of the hardest things that I have done like to date, because in certain times you have to really focus not only on the educational component, on the clinical component as well. So some days I was working 16 hours, and by working I mean volunteering, getting clinical hours and not necessarily getting income. So it was a very delicate balance, managing all of that and also being a mom.
Was there any doubt that you wanted to give up at one point, or was there any doubt what the road is ahead? I'm sure you didn't have like a crystal ball clear picture besides the dream that you have a company, but what was the why that kept you going?
That's a great question. I think early on, I just was so fascinated by the idea of being the change that I wish to see in the community. So when I had difficult days, believe it or not, it was my clients that motivated me, even up to a conversation I had maybe 2 days ago with a client that I randomly saw that I supported as their doula. And they said, you're walking in your purpose. And it's every day in which I'm able to engage with my clients and get that reassurance that you're on the right track. I think that's the biggest thing that keeps me going. Another big thing is my faith. Like, without God, I would not be where I am today, because I really believe that this mission was given to me by him, and I'm moving and able to move it forward because of his grace.
A lot of people see what's broken, but you saw what's possible. What helped you move in that direction and build that?
In a system like the healthcare system that we have, obviously there is a need for health in hospitals, right? So all of the various hospital systems that we have in Queens, I believe we have about 8. But when I started to see the change in the way that people were able to receive those services, when I saw the way my clients was being treated in certain hospitals, when I saw services being taken away, like Mount Sinai Queens no longer has maternity services. So many of those families are going to Manhattan, taking ferries, going over I still call it the 59th Street Bridge, forgive me. So it's like everyone is going outside of Queens. Many of these babies are being conceived in Queens, but they're not necessarily being born in Queens. So that showed me that the system somewhere, somehow became broken, and no one decided to fix it.
And there you are, ready to fix it. Yes. It starts with one step, one person. Always.
I agree. And I tell everybody, with the work that we're doing at Birth by Queens, we are not going to fix the maternal health crisis. Just for being a person of color, I'm 8 times more likely to die in childbirth, a natural physiological process. But I do believe that we're a key component to being part of the solution, because across the United States, there's about 415 birth centers. 415 opportunities to make a change, but here in Queens, we don't have any.
And explain to me what a birth center is, and for people that don't know.
So that's a great question. So a birth center is essentially a place where you can go and deliver your baby in the support of your community, with support of your family, in a very holistic minded experience, and also midwifery led. So midwifery is, I think, a key component as part of the solution, because they really follow the whole family unit. It's not just about the gestational carrier. So it's not just about the baby being born safely. It's also making sure that the family unit is supported in the pregnancy as well.
And what are the steps that you did until now, and where you're in the process of starting the birth center?
So the first thing that we did before before anything is that we had to talk about it, because I've actually had this dream in my mind for over 2-3 years, and I didn't tell anybody about it, but I was thinking and learning more about it for myself, and then I joined an organization called AABC, which is the American Birth Center Association. And since then, my eyes and ears just opened up to a community of individuals who are on the same path. They're all interested in developing birth centers, or they're developing birth centers. There was just a birth center that just celebrated their 10,000th baby being born. And I also got connected with Birth Center Equity, which Birth Center Equity is a organization that works with individuals who are BIPOC, so Black and Indigenous people of color, leading birth centers, because while we see there's 415 birth centers, there's not many that are Black led. So that's also a disparity that I'm looking to change as well.
Why do you think there was no birth center in Queens? Is it the process that is very difficult to start one? Why we don't have one?
So I think there's a couple of challenges. One, I think the main challenge is the fact that we are a certificate of need state. And that means that we have to go through a very arduous process in order to open our doors, right? And that's a very expensive process. And this process is designed really for hospitals. And as I described before, we're very different from a hospital. And we are also looking at and supporting families who are low risk. So these are individuals who could potentially actually have a home birth if they so choose. So when we look at this process and we look at how many birth centers are in the state, it is a direct correlation. The states who have certificate of need have the lower amounts of birth centers as compared to like a place like Texas, where they have several, over a dozen.
So if nothing changes, what is the risk, especially for women of color and families of color?
So I think if nothing changes and things become the way it is in the status quo, I think that the things are going to get worse, right? Even with time. And there was a report in the 1930s about the maternal health crisis and the disparities. And here we are in 2026 still talking about the same crisis. There hasn't been any improvement. There has been improvement in technology, but families like me are unfortunately still dying in childbirth at alarming rates compared to their white counterparts.
So you come from work, you told me.
Yes.
Now, what do you do now until the birth center it's open?
So right now we are actually supporting births. So we do prenatal education for families. We also do labor and delivery support. So if they're having a birth at the birth center that are existing outside of New York City, or if they're having a home birth, or if they're going to the hospital, we support them during that process. If they're postpartum already, we're doing postpartum visits in home. And the big question is like, what do you do during a postpartum visit? And the answer is like, pretty much everything. It really depends on what the needs are for the family. If it's a first-time family, really it's like reassuring them, making sure that they're following up with their care, making sure that the baby has a pediatrician, because now you have another person on the care team, and making sure that they're taking deep breaths and remembering that they're part of this process and they have to heal from it too. And then it's connecting them to as many resources as I can, because like I'm just one person. So making sure that they also have a village around them. And I think that's a really important part of the birth center, is not just me. We're all building the village together.
Yeah. And I'm sure young moms need all the support that they can get.
Yes, indeed.
And I met you at the community board meeting,
Yes.
and I heard your story, and then I approached you. Why do you go to community board meetings? Explain that process.
Yes. So I go to community board meetings because I know that the community board is essentially the thought process and the voice of the community. I think I live in Community Board 12, and I actually served on the community board for 2 terms. And I really think that it is a great vehicle for conveying to the community what is up and coming, what are the concerns. So that's why I am very intentional on making sure that we're not only doing community-based work, which we basically do community baby showers, we have our own community conversations and listening sessions, but we're specifically going to the community board to make sure that they know the work that we're doing and how important it is to the families that we're serving. On top of that, I think it's also a good way for us to connect with resources, right? Because sometimes I might not know something that's in Rico Park when I'm in St. Albans, or there might be something that's happening amazingly in Flushing that other people from different parts of Queens could really participate in. So it's also a great opportunity for resource sharing as well.
And speaking of the birth center, have you chosen area? What are the criterias? What are you looking for?
So for us, in terms of like choosing a location, I think what's most important is looking at the needs of the community specific to what is happening in the health disparities. So I think that's an important consideration. I also think it's important to consider how accessible it is, right? So is it near a bus line? Is it near a train line? Is it near the Long Island Railroad as well? But ultimately, in terms of like what building we can have, we also have to follow zoning, which is a really big conversation during community board conversations, as you are aware. And then finding a facility that is also going to be able to facilitate our needs, making sure that it's big enough for us to have a multitude of different providers, because that's also important to us. It's not just birth. Our motto is birth is just the beginning. As many qualified health providers we are looking to hold space for all those individuals and other community members as well. Our goal is to also have a community space where individuals can come in and activate the space.
And if everything works out, no, when everything works out.
I like that correction.
Yes. 5 years from now, what is the vision? What is going to be the birth center?
So 5 years from now, our goal right now, we're on a 1,000 days campaign to open a birth center. Our deadline to get started is December 2027. And I think 5 years from now, I'm hoping that there's more than one birth center in Queens. I think that there's tremendous opportunity for each different part of Queens to have their own birth center, the same way we have 8 hospital systems. And then if I'm dreaming really, really big, I would want each state, not necessarily each state, but each region of New York State, to also have birth centers. So there's fabulous work that's happening in Potsdam, New York. Midwife Sunday has an amazing birth center. There's also Cocoon Wellness, that is also another birth center that is upstate doing amazing work. But I think each region in New York really should have access to a birth center. And if I'm dreaming really, really big, every county.
I love that. And you mentioned that it all started with one girl approaching you while you were school counselor. Do you still keep in touch? And is that one story that stayed with you, or are there more?
So that story stays with me. I definitely try to keep tabs on her. In the age of social media, I'm able to kind of like see what's going on and check on her a little bit. But I think it really stems from the community that's one community that I started. But I feel like our community continues to grow. So we're checking in on all of our families whenever we have the opportunity to. And then sometimes we meet in happenstance. Like just on Sunday on Easter, I got to see one of my doula babies, and I wasn't planning to see them. They were coming out of their car, and I saw they were struggling with the strolling, and I looked up and I said, wait a minute. You're one of my doula babies. What are you doing here? So it happens. It's almost like you're in a grocery store. You never know who you're going to see. So when you're in the community, you never know what doula baby you're going to see.
And you're very active in the community. I love it.
Yes.
And this is the biggest moment of someone's life, having a baby. So you being part of that, I'm sure it feels like a miracle work. So, and I always end with one question that I ask all my guests, and it's not related to your work, but someone new to Queens, and if they want to experience culture, where would you send them?
Someone new to Queens, where would I send them to experience culture? I'm an old fashioned girl. Like, I would tell them to take the bus and see where it takes you. Because there's so many different communities within Queens. Like, we're called the world's borough for a reason, because literally depending on the street that you're on, you might be in a different country. So I highly recommend using the MTA bus to just take a tour and see where it takes you and see what piques your interest. I can't point out one specific community. I grew up in Long Island City, so Long Island City is home. So I would say definitely stop by Long Island City. But there's many different amazing places in Queens. So
Right.
I think the best way to see it is through the bus.
I love it. Is there anything that you want to share with the viewers that we haven't talked about?
So first I want to be fully transparent and say I am really honored to be here to talk about the work that we're doing, something I grew up with, Queens Public Television, and to now be sharing a dream and a vision that I could only be dreaming about to this day, and to think about how I got to this point and where the education started is really at another public portion of Queens, which is the Queens Public Library System. I spent a lot of time learning and studying at the Queens Public Library System. And now, because of that level of support that was available to the community, I'm able to dream even further. So I'm really honored to be here today. And I hope you'll join us at our grand opening for Birth by Queens.
When is that?
Well, our goal is December 2027. So, you can mark that on
sure.
your calendar.
Yes.
But in between time, we are definitely servicing as many families as we can. So families who are currently pregnant, feel free to reach out to us. We're available on social media if that's your thing, Birth by Queens. And we also have a wonderful website at www.birthbyqueens.org if you would love to get in touch with us.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It has been an honor.
That's it for today's show. I'll see you next time on Around Queens.